in filling out the registration form before you proceed to enter the Singaraja room. We are about to start our forum for today. For participants who are still outside of this room, we invite you to enter Singaraja room and occupy the seat provided. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to start our forum for today. For participants who are still outside of the room, I welcome you all to come to this room and sit on your seat. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed speakers and distinguished participants, a hearty welcome to ASEAN Chairmanship 2023 side event morning session, which will discuss sustainable energy financing and mobilization of energy investment to ensure energy security and achieve NDCs in ASEAN. My name is Talia, and it is my great honor to welcome you here today. Before we proceed to our agenda for today, it is an honor for me to introduce and also greet His Excellency Insinyur Yudo Dwinanda Priyadi, Director General for New Renewable Energy and Energy Conservation, Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources. His Excellency Yunus Saiful Haq, Head of Bureau Energy Policy and Assembly National Energy Council. Her Excellency Emma Sri Martini, Director of Finance PT Pertamina Persero. Dr. Zulfikar Yurnaidi, Manager of Energy Modeling and Policy Planning, ASEAN Center for Energy. And Professor Hidetoshi Nishimura, Supreme Advisor to the President of IRIA. I would also like to extend a warm welcome to everyone joining this event virtually from all corners of the world. Hello from Nusa Dua, Bali. Before we begin, I would like to thank our co-hosts for today, the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia, ASEAN Center for Energy, and the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources of Indonesia. Thank you for hosting all of us here today. For our first agenda for today, we have the privilege of hearing welcoming remarks from our distinguished leaders. Please direct your attention to the screen as we hear from His Excellency Minister Arifin Tasrif, Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources of Indonesia.
Excellencies, Mr. Tetsuya Watanabe, President of Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia, Dr. Nuki, Executive Director, ASEAN Center of Energy, delegates of ASEAN member states, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. It is a great pleasure for me to take part virtually in the ASEAN Chairmanship 2023 side event with the theme Sustainable Energy Financing and Mobilization of Energy Investment and Advancing CCUS Implementation for Energy Security in ASEAN. My deepest appreciation to AREA and ASEAN Center for Energy for an excellent collaboration in organizing this prestigious event. The ASEAN member states recognizes the importance of sustainable energy development, energy security, and addressing climate change. To achieve these goals, several strategies are being employed, including develop clear concept for energy transition, sustainable finance, establish a long-term renewable energy roadmap, as well as deploy green technology. According to IRENA report, to implement energy transition, ASEAN needs financing of about $29 trillion by 2050 under scenario of 1.5 degrees C with 100% renewable energy. This investment requirement is intended for renewable energy generation development, transmission, national and international distribution, and storage, biofuel supply, electrification, EV cars and EV chargers, as well as in considering a wider cost perspective that includes fuel costs, operation, and maintenance. To finance these measures, sustainable energy financing is highly needed. This can be achieved through blended finance, public-private partnerships, and international funding. Conducive environment for investors is also essential to mobilize clean energy investment. This could be created through incentives, policy framework, and transparent investment procedures. Executing energy transition also needs low carbon and clean energy technologies such as CCS, CCUS. CCS, CCUS technology is essential for mitigating carbon emissions from industries that are challenging to decarbonize, including oil and gas industry. Indonesia has a potential of 12 billion tons CO2 potential storage for CCUS and CCUS. Currently, there are 15 projects are under study and in preparation stages through cooperation with oil and gas companies. Minister regulation on CCS, CCUS implementation in upstream oil and gas business activities has been issued. Moreover, the arrangement is needed in order to regulate implementation of CCS, CCUS hubs, which can enable the opening of CCS, CCUS activities outside the oil and gas working areas, and open cross-border transportation enabling cross-country emissions. To further develop CCS, CCUS technology, we need to invest in research and development to improve the efficiency and affordability of CCS, CCUS technology. ASEAN's approach to sustainable energy financing, mobilization of energy investment, and advancing CCS, CCUS implementation reflects the region's commitment to addressing climate change, promoting sustainable energy development, and ensuring energy security for its member countries. I believe that strengthening partnership among ASEAN member states, as well as between government and industry, will increase energy security and clean energy development towards carbon neutrality. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for your remarks. Next, let us hear from His Excellency Dr. Kau Kim Hoorn as the Secretary General of ASEAN.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, speakers, and guests, good morning. I'm an honor to join the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources of Indonesia, the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia area, and the ASEAN Center for Energy in welcoming ASEAN member states and guests to this event. I thank the resource speakers and panelists who will be sharing their knowledge and expertise today in support of the activities under Indonesia's chairmanship of ASEAN this year. Today's activity resonates with ASEAN's multi-sector efforts on sustainable development and carbon neutrality. This forum on sustainable energy financing and mobilization of energy investments will contribute to the vital work of identifying crucial challenges and enable us to secure finance for the energy transition and scale renewable energy, energy efficiency, and other emerging low-carbon technologies in the region. The afternoon session devoted to advancing CCUS implementation will also present opportunities to learn from the forefront of deployment experience and the best practices for such important decarbonization technologies such as CCUS. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, ASEAN is confident that it could remain competitive given its dynamic environment, high growth potential, its regional plan to complement the NDC commitments of its member states, and other advantages including lower manufacturing costs and the region's strategic location. The ASEAN region, with its fast-growing energy demand due to economic growth, must take significant strides in financing decarbonization, in improving the regulatory environment to enable the bankability of energy investments, and to ensuring that decarbonization technologies such as CCUS can achieve significant carbon emissions reductions while we remain economically competitive. The efforts to advance CCUS implementation as a key contributor to the future of the energy sector in ASEAN needs to be accelerated. To realize its potential, it is imperative that we focus on regional collaboration as we consider potential opportunities for cross-border carbon transport, joint regional CCUS hub infrastructures, and resource pooling in industrial hubs. This regional approach not only enhances the economic feasibility of CCUS projects, but also strengthens our regional ties in the pursuit of a sustainable energy future. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, implementing ASEAN's sustainability agenda across all sectors is key. And for this, I'm pleased to share that we are seeing significant momentum on this front. This year, ASEAN began rolling out activities under the implementation plan of the ASEAN Circular Economy Framework, with initial focus on the agriculture, transportation, and energy sectors. To complement these, ASEAN is also poised to release an ASEAN strategy on carbon neutrality to be finalized at the parallel meetings of the ASEAN economic ministers this week and to be considered at the ASEAN summit in September. We believe that a carbon neutrality strategy will bring economic opportunities, maintain the region's competitiveness in trade and investments, and position ASEAN as an epicentrum of growth. Area support to develop an ASEAN blue economy framework will also help provide strategic direction and broad guidelines for ASEAN's work in the blue economy front, which could be also strengthening the emerging sectors in offshore renewable energy, including offshore solar, wind, and tidal. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am similarly pleased to share complementary efforts by the ASEAN finance and banking sectors to address the region's sustainable financing needs. Version 2 of the ASEAN Taxonomy for Sustainable Finance was published in March of this year that will provide an inclusive and credible classification system for sustainable activities, key to attracting investments and financial flows into sustainable projects in the region. I note that in response to the urgency of region's energy transition, version 2 prioritized focus on the energy sector as a first sector among the ASEAN taxonomy's 6 focus sectors. Other complementary initiatives, including the ASEAN Central Bank's development of an ASEAN Green Map to strengthen the synergy and responses across the various sectoral bodies in developing a sustainable finance ecosystem in ASEAN, as well as the ASEAN standards for sustainability-focused bonds and funds, such as the sustainability linked bond standards and the sustainable and responsible fund standards. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, indeed, a successful energy transition would need to close the resourcing gaps in both financing and access to technology, including for CCUS, as well as to unpack the ways in which both project quality and bankability could be improved to better access emerging sustainable financing, provide greater confidence for the private sector to invest in ASEAN, and significantly improve deployment in the region. The challenges presented by climate change require decisive action, and CCUS plays a role in the menu of viable and global solutions for our energy sector. Let us collaborate, innovate, and commit resources to reverse the trend of carbon emissions while nurturing economic growth and fortifying ties among the ASEAN member states. Collectively, we have the ability to shape a cleaner, more prosperous future for ourselves and for the future generations. Once again, my warmest welcome to today's AMS delegates and guests, and I wish you all successful deliberations. Thank you very much.
We thank Dr. Kao Kim Horn for his remarks. Next, we are going to hear another remarks from the Supreme Advisor to the President of AREA. Please welcome to the stage Professor Hidetoshi Nishimura.
Excellencies, Ministers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you all. Today, it is my greatest honor to deliver my opening remarks in the capacity of my new position as Supreme Advisor to the President of ASEAN. ASEAN, together with Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resource Indonesia, MEMR, and ASEAN Center for Energy, ACE, are very pleased to jointly host these two imparable side events of ASEAN chairmanship on sustainable energy financing and mobilization of energy investment this morning, and another event on the afternoon on advancing CCUS implementation for energy security in ASEAN. From the outset, and amongst many other important things for important agenda of carbon neutrality and net zero emissions, appropriate financing for energy transitions and choosing the right technologies will help countries to find pathways to reach the net zero emissions by 2050 or beyond, depending on each country's circumstances. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, securing sufficient investment for, number one, financing energy infrastructure, number two, transforming from the current heavy reliance on fossil fuel infrastructure towards future cleaner, and number three, resilience energy systems. That kind of sufficient investment is a great challenge of our time. Those challenges included on how to ensure the energy transition could be smooth and leave no one behind, considering the energy affordability, accessibility, and energy security, while striking to achieve the climate goal of the Paris Agreement, aiming to limit global warming to well below 2.2 degrees Celsius, preferably to 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial level. As the COVID pandemic is over and most economies in EAS region started to recover, the bounce back energy demand seems to put pressure more on how to secure an appropriate energy supply, while investing in the clean fuels and renewable energy are critical for the future clean energy system. The region should not overlook that transition fuels such as natural gas and other important transition technologies that can help to do the better transition to meet the carbon neutrality by 2050. With this in mind, ASEAN has published key important ASEAN carbon neutrality challenges. Those included the diversity of mitigation pathways toward carbon neutrality, importance of all technologies and fuels, all, crucial role of natural gas technologies, natural gas and transition technologies, and underpinning finance. Earlier has released the technology risk and perspectives for transition finance in Asia, TLP-TFA, which aims to support the smooth energy transitions in developing Asia with realistic approaches that can facilitate many countries in Asia to embark on pathways to carbon neutrality. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, toward net zero, AREA has classified 3 stages of technology solution, covering in the first phase of only power generation and upstream sector, which contribute to over 50% of the emission in the entire energy system. AREA classified 3 stages of technologies to net zero. Number 1, early decarbonization transition technologies. Those technologies are the immediate switching from coal to natural gas power generation, waste to energy power plant in the power sector, and leak detection, LDAR, for fugitive emission reduction in upstream. This technology can be deployed in the early phases of a country's transition pathways and may be retired before reaching net zero emission. Number 2, partial emissions reduction transition technologies. Those technologies included the co-combustion of coal-fired power generation with biomass or ammonia, and the co-combustion of gas-fired power generation with hydrogen fuels. Gradually, it needs to increase the share of biomass, ammonia, and hydrogen to the power generation mix. For the upstream sector, we suggest introducing to use electrification in gas production and processing. Number 3, deep decarbonization transition technologies. Those technologies are CCUS combined with coal gas power generation, blue hydrogen, blue ammonia, and CCUS in gas processing. It is very important to note that the CCUS has been selected for the technology list based on 6 criteria, such as 6 criteria, well, it's like that. Well, number 1, emission impact. Number 2, affordability. Number 3, reliability. Number 4, lock-in prevention, which highlights the emission reduction plan. Number 5, do no significant harm. And number 6, social consideration. Our list, you can detailed evaluation of each in process, technology process, you can, what is the suitable for this technology could be financed. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, fast-tracking energy finance in the energy transition is very critical to ensure that countries can secure enough funds to finance their energy transformation system. It is observed that annual investment of renewables and clean energy grows steadfastly since the announced Paris Agreement on climate goal in 2015 to now. In 2023, it is estimated that $1.7 trillion is invested in the renewables and clean technologies, while $1 trillion is invested into the fossil fuels. The increasing share of investment in clean energy has been outpaced the fossil fuel investment since 2016 up until now in 2023. This is a new trend that the investment sentiment has made the right course towards renewables and clean fuels. However, attention will need to be made to developing countries on how to finance the energy transition from the heavily fossil fuel-based energy system towards cleaner. This will need energy transition finance in which area is working on and advocating for an appropriate energy transition finance focusing on transition technologies above I've already mentioned. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I look forward to a fruitful discussion on ways in which the region could mobilize enough sustainable energy financing and the development and deployment of CCUS in our region. I wish our conference, this conference, successful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Nishimura, for your remarks. For our next agenda, let's hear from the Director General for International Policy on Carbon Neutrality Agency for Natural Resources and Energy from the Minister of Economy, Trade and Industry, Japan. Please welcome His Excellency Mr. Shinichi Kihara.
Selamat pagi. His Excellency Arifin Tarif, Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources of Indonesia, and distinguished guests. My name is Shinichi Kihara, Director General for International Policy on Carbon Neutrality, Agency for Natural Resources and Energy. On behalf of the Government of Japan, I would like to extend my greetings. Addressing climate change is an urgent issue that we must tackle together. In particular, in order to achieve global decarbonization as soon as possible, it is crucial that developed and emerging countries work together. In pursuing these initiatives in Asia, we must pay close attention to the unique circumstances of each country, such as geographical conditions and stage of development. It is also necessary to address multiple difficulties at the same time, such as securing stable and affordable energy and achieving sustainable economic growth. In addition, situation surrounding energy is changing dramatically in the international community in the wake of Russian invasion of Ukraine. We believe that now is the time to promote a balanced energy transition that addresses climate change while ensuring adequate energy supply in the immediate future and energy security in the medium to long term. For this reason, sustainable investment in transition technologies is essential. Currently, the international financial industry is rapidly withdrawing investments, especially in fossil fuel projects. However, in Asia, where energy demand is growing but dependence on fossil fuel is high, and the potential capacity for introducing renewable energy is not necessarily higher than in Europe, rapid investment withdrawal could increase social and economic costs, such as job loss and economic burden. In order to avoid such a situation, Japan recognizes the importance of mobilizing investments in transition technologies, including hydrogen, ammonia, and CCUS technologies to decarbonize thermal power generation. Japan has launched the Asia Energy Transition Initiative, AETI, to accelerate and support diverse and realistic energy transitions, taking into account these unique circumstances in Asia and utilizing all available measures and technologies. In accordance with the principles of AETI, a group of Asian and global private sectoral financial institutions with similar concerns have come together to develop transition finance guidelines and a list of technologies that will contribute to a steady energy transition in Asia. The Japanese government will continue to support the efforts of the Asian Transition Finance Study Group. In addition, it is important to share knowledge on decarbonization technologies with other countries. Through the Asia CCUS network, launched the year before last, with the cooperation of AREA, we have held seminars and workshops to share technologies and knowledge on CCUS with other Asian countries. We will continue to work together with our other countries to decarbonize the Asian region and form future projects. Last but not least, Japan will hold the Tokyo GX Week again this year from September 25th to realize GX, which will lead to decarbonization and economic growth and development by shifting to a clean energy-centered economy, society, and industrial structure. Aiming to simultaneously achieving energy security, decarbonization, and economic growth, we will discuss innovation, policies, and frameworks that will make this possible and disseminate them to the world. We sincerely look forward to your participation. Climate change and sustainability is a difficult challenge for human beings, and it is essential to bring together the wisdom of the world to discover solutions and to open up new future. Asia, the region with innovative technologies and industries, large market potentials, and rich human resources, has a large potential to collaborate in accelerating global green transformation. Government of Japan is eager to strengthen the partnership with Asia through the Asia Zero Emission Community, ASEAN, and contribute to the secure and sustainable future for Japan, for Asia, for the world. I would like to thank you for this excellent opportunity. Terima kasih.
Thank you, His Excellency Kihara. Now moving on, let's hear from His Excellency Dr. T. Norin, Secretary of State, Ministry of State from the Ministry of Mines and Energy of Cambodia.
Honorable Minister, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. First, I would like to offer my appreciation to the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia for your great initiative to organize the side event for sustainable energy financing and mobilization of energy investment in advancing CCUS implementation for energy security in ASEAN, held in conjunction with the 41st ASEAN Minister on Energy meeting and its associate meeting. I am glad to join with all honored energy ministers together with our regional partner and private sector to boost energy transition for energy security through exploring financing support, mobilize investment, and advancing the implementation on CCUS. I believe today even present a good opportunity for policymakers and industry leaders to come together to discuss on low carbon development, sustainable finance, innovation policy, and implementation measures to channel investment toward a timely energy transition. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, we are recognized that our region is currently striving for socio-economic recovery as well as coping with emerging challenges which have contributed to high growth of electricity demand, and therefore it requires a restructuring of the power development plan through various energy development sources and use of modern technology in efficient and sustainable manner. At the same time, we see that the share of energy sources in ASEAN today continue to rely on fossil fuel at about 80% of, and this number will continue to increase in the future to meet the growth of energy demand. Facing all these matters, most of the countries have revised their power development plan, including Cambodia. Our new PDP will require a total of 9,089 million of investment to expand domestic generation capacity. From 2026 onward, more than 6,550 million is allocated planned hydro dam, solar PV plant, battery energy storage system, natural gas, and biomass. The PDP guides us with an option strategy for transitioning the power system toward a cleaner grid while maintaining existing government agreement. It takes an effective approach to reduce emission through the deployment of renewable energy, the implementation of energy efficiency, upgrade and leveraging interconnection to import power from neighboring countries. Although the PDP is not include low carbon energy alternative, but it will be evaluated and considered in the future, including emerging technology such as carbon capture, utilization, and storage, and hydrogen. Cambodia is doing our part to invest the energy transition. Realizing this low carbon transition and ensuring that it just and inclusive require the reshaping of economic system, policy, and financial instrument, as well as adoption of innovative and secure of technology and practice. In fact, early this year, Cambodia have signed an MOU with JICA to develop a roadmap on clean energy transition toward carbon neutrality society. The roadmap is a complement document to the PDP. When the study is completed, it will provide us energy transition roadmap scenario in relevant to the sector, considering affordability and reliability while securing long-term carbon neutrality, which include 1. Formulate primary energy roadmap toward carbon neutrality by mid-21st century and recommend on the existing power development plan. 2. Identify priority technology on measures necessary to be used from such options as energy efficiency, renewable energy, grid interconnection, utilization of natural gas, hydrogen, ammonia, and carbon dioxide capture and CCUS, etc. 3. Recommend policy action, institutional framework, and investment project for facilitating introduction of the priority technology and measure. 4. Identify priority area for international cooperation and financing. Currently, Cambodia is also working together with ADB to implement energy transition sector development program 2023-2025. It covers on 3 policy reform areas, including: first, energy planning and governance strengthening; second, low carbon and circular economy transition accelerated; and third, transparent and competitive investment in new solution enabled. In addition, with the newly formed royal government for the 7th legislature mandate for 2023 to 2028, Cambodia set 6 directions of its energy development sector, 2 of which are: 1, to promote and attract type of investment to develop the energy sector and the energy transition toward carbon neutrality, and 2nd, to strengthen and expand international cooperation, both regional and global, to exchange power trade, diversify power sources, and mutually complement each other, share exchange experience, new technology, and increase financing source. We will come forward with proposals to boost renewable energy with emerging technology and improve energy efficiency. We will propose measures to increase the energy efficiency of appliances and boost green investment of the energy system in the coming decade to make sustainable. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, Cambodia look forward to learn from your experience and initiative and work with the stakeholders and help inform policy and decision making that can turn the shared vision for future energy transition more reality. I also keen to hear from honored speaker to discuss the landscape of financing instruments to support the deployment of low carbon proven technology while ensuring the energy security and sustainability. In closing, I would like to extend my thanks to Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia for driving this initiative, as well as the Ministry of Energy and Mine Resources and ASEAN Center for Energy for their support. Let me also express my deep appreciation to all the honorable minister, senior official, and development partner for making time on their busy schedule to participate in this event. I hope that each of you will benefit from the knowledge and insight share that we share today event and come away with a deeper understanding of new concepts around the energy transition, sustainable finance, CCUS, and way to implement them for our country and region. I wish the event a great success. Thank you.
We thank His Excellency for his remarks. And now moving on to the keynote speeches. The first speech will be delivered by the Director General for New Renewable Energy and Energy Conservation from the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources of Indonesia. Please welcome to the stage His Excellency Insinyur Yudo Dwinanda Priyadi.
Very good morning to you all. Pak Nuki, represented by Pak Zulfikar, yeah. And Pak Watanabe, by Professor Nishimura. Thank you, sir. A very inspiring speech. Thank you. I'll take a note that you know about the all technologies as well as a deep decarbonization. That's to think that we also think about that in Indonesia. And colleagues around my table, Pak Yunus, Bu Emma, Pak Zulfikar, yeah, and distinguished speakers, moderators, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and thank you for your presence here in Nusa Dua, Bali. First of all, I would like to extend my gratitude to Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia Area and ASEAN Center for Energy, ACE, for co-host this event. Truly appreciate this collaboration between ACE and area. Looking forward for a more or a closer relation between Indonesia and these two prominent think tank. This morning we will discuss an important issue, namely financing and mobilizing investment on sustainable energy to ensure energy security and achieve nationally determined contribution in ASEAN member states. Nowadays, our attention is being shifted to achieve more sustainability so that the planet can go to support our life in the future. Recognizing this issue, ASEAN member states, including Indonesia, have together ratified the Paris Agreement to realize its nationally determined contribution targets. In Indonesia case, we increase our commitment. We strengthen our commitment by establishing the published enhanced NDC. By 2030, we plan to reduce GHG emission to 31.89% by own efforts and 43% with international support compared to business as usual level. For energy sector in particular, we expect more than 358 million tons CO2 is reduced by 2030. This target will be achieved through massive renewable energy development, biofuel implementation, fuel switching, as well as energy efficiency. Just for your info, right now we are preparing a revision of RUPTL, the 10 years electricity plan. So we were discussing with PLN, and then we are looking for a more progressive result within this decade and beyond. In addition, for hard-to-abate industries such as cement, iron, steel, and chemical, the implementation of carbon capture, utilization, and storage, as well as energy conservation and efficiency will be crucial. We believe that energy diversification, energy efficiency, and clean technology utilization are very important for our climate change mitigation efforts while still ensuring national energy security and sovereignty. Ladies and gentlemen, in implementing the energy transition, we have huge modality in terms of energy potential. ASEAN member states have abundant renewable energy potential amounting to 17,000 gigawatts, which also consists of various forms of energy such as solar, hydropower, wind, geothermal, and bioenergy. So, Professor Nishimura mentioned about all technologies. I think this is something that's very, very crucial for us. We should take a note on these issues. I believe that this potential will be fully utilized for energy transition effort in Southeast Asia while considering each country's strategies and national circumstances. We are all different respectively, but we are heading within the same corridor. For Indonesia, we have more than 3,600 gigawatts new and renewable energy resources, and we aim to deploy more than 20 gigawatts of NRE power plants by 2030 and 700 gigawatts of them by 2060. Moreover, Indonesia also plans to develop smart and interconnected grid transmission. This is also one of the key elements of the revised, the ongoing revision of the RUPTL. Talking about grid, talking about inter-island transmission. Indonesia need to have this big system, what we call the green enabling supergrid. So besides transmission, of course, talking about distribution, energy storage, so that the energy deployment can be utilized fully. However, to implement the transition, we should also recognize that funding and investment are absolutely necessary, making them a great challenge to be tackled on. According to IRENA Renewable Energy Outlook for ASEAN, an average annual investment of $210 billion would be needed up to year 2050 in the Southeast Asia region to align with 1.5 degrees centigrade scenario, aiming to reach net zero emission globally in 2050. Securing financing from developed countries such as Just Energy Transition Partnership, JETP, Asia Zero Emission Communities, ASEC, and Energy Transition Mechanism, ETM, is vital. In addition, innovative green financing such as Green Bonds, Energy Services Company, ESCO, and other financing scheme is encouraged to be explored and implemented. de-risking mechanism is also an important action to ensure bankable energy projects. Another option for financing energy transition projects is through carbon market. Next month in September, Indonesia will launch our carbon market using our IDX, Indonesia capital market infrastructure. So hopefully next year we can launch this new market, carbon market in Indonesia, and we also preparing the standard for mainly for calculating this carbon content in carbon capture. With the recent trends to increase climate ambition in developed countries, ASEAN holds an immense potential and plays a vital role in generating carbon credits from energy sector. My ministers, in his remarks, he mentioned about the big potential for Indonesia to store, capture and store carbon. So hopefully in the future it's going to be very interesting new business that attract more investment to Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, energy transition implementation will face substantial challenges, including funding, investment, and technology. Last year, when I chaired the Energy Transition Working Group G20 here in Nusa Dua, Indonesia brought the issue of technology and finance. These two critical elements, what we think to achieve successful energy transition. Again, technology and finance is very, very crucial when talking about energy transition. As a fast-growing region in the world with demographic bonus and regional stability, ASEAN possesses a major asset to be epicentrum of growth. We have to seize this opportunity in energy transition because clean energy not only benefit the environment, but also create jobs, very crucial for Indonesia because we have very big numbers of young people that looking for job in this country, stimulate economic growth, and fostering people welfare through affordable and competitive energy costs. ASEAN matters epicentrum of growth. Thank you.
Thank you, His Excellency Yudo, for your remarks. Next, please allow me to invite to the stage Dr. Zulfikar Yurnaidi, the Manager of Energy Modeling and Policy Planning from the ASEAN Center for Energy.
Good morning. On behalf of Dr. Nuki Agia Utama and ASEAN Center for Energy, allow me to express our sincerest gratitude, especially for area Nishimura Sensei, and also Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, Pak Yudo, for the strong collaborations in having all the ASEAN chairmanship set events, including today's two events on sustainable financing and also the CCUS. Can I have the slides? I think we prepared slides for the keynote. Okay, thank you. Very brief, I would like to share with you what would be the position and also opinion of ASEAN Center for Energy, especially on the sustainable energy financing for energy security and sustainability in ASEAN. Next slide, please. Of course, we know that in ASEAN, we are trying to balance energy security, affordability, accessibility, and also sustainability, which we call the 4 pillars of energy cooperation in ASEAN. Why? First, the economic growth in the region is projected to grow up to 4 times from 2020 to 2050. This means a huge need of energy required, both in final primary energy, final energy consumption and also in primary energy supply. We noted that in baseline scenario, without specific policies geared towards energy efficiency and renewable energy, this energy supply can grow up to 4 times from 2020 until 2050. This put a very stress importance for energy efficiency and conservation effort to push these numbers down up to only 2.7 times growth in regional scenario, meaning that if all regions in ASEAN collaborated together to achieve their regional energy efficiency and renewable energy targets. Even so, we noted that the fossil fuels are still there, mainly coming from oil products for transport sector, and also coal from power and industry sectors, the deep decarbonization sectors. And this brings an issue for energy security for ASEAN. ASEAN has been a net importer of oil even since 2000. And based on our projection, it can become a net importer of gas as early as 2025. Even they can become a net importer of coal if they do not shift the energy structure towards renewable energy and also improving energy efficiency. So this is the importance of having energy diversifications and also transition towards sustainable energy. Next slide. So we noted that energy transition is inevitable. It's not only the issue about sustainability, but also the issue of security. From the region, we push this energy transition through APAEC, the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperations. So this is the regional blueprint that guides the regions toward the achievement of energy transition. We noted that the share of renewable energy in installed capacity is actually quite good. We are now in 33.6%. For information, our regional target is to have 35% of renewable energy in installed tower capacity by 2025. So we only have 1.4% gap towards that target. But we also need to address the issue of renewable energy in primary energy supply. That includes the whole sector of energy. Our target is 23% of renewable energy in primary energy supply by 2025. Coincidentally, the same targets with Indonesia. But currently our number is on 14.4%, meaning we need to improve the achievement of renewable energy not only in power sectors, not only installed capacity, but also in generations, in transport sectors, and also in buildings. Next slide, please. We noted several catalysts that we noted very important for energy transition. As a region in ASEAN, energy interconnectivity is the key. Of course, I presented with you in here the importance of ASEAN power grid, which according to our study, both the AO7 and also the AM3, very crucial for the achievement of regional target. But moving forward, we also noted that the connectivity in terms of security for oil and gas, for CCUS, for carbon storage, and also hydrogen and ammonia will be very important. So this is also the message that we want to bring together as ASEAN and also with our partners, including +3 and also partners, other partners. Next slide, please. Financing. It can become both the bottleneck, which holding our potential of having energy transition, but also can become a catalyst. It has been mentioned before that we need up to 6 until 7 trillion US dollar and from 2020 until 2050 to achieve the 1.5 degree. This is a lot more than the scenario that we have in ASEAN Energy Outlook because we have a less share of renewable energy and less share of electrifications, meaning it can be costly. So addressing this financing is very, very important for ASEAN and also for Indonesia. Next slide, please. This is my last. Highlighting again what was mentioned by Pak Yudo before, energy transitions need to be designed so as to be in line with the economic growth. So improving the three-party security, sustainability, and also economic growth would be very important. Renewable energy can produce jobs creations, but I think what's also important is having this energy transition to be as just and as secure as possible, something that I believe are being pushed in Indonesia by the Ministry of Energy through the JETP, the ETM, and other initiatives. And we do hope that this initiative can also be shared with ASEAN. Next slide. So I think that's from my side. Maybe just to conclude, we welcome today's two events, and we noted that the importance of energy financing and also CCUS as the key emerging technologies to achieve energy transition to the future. Last but not least, I would like to highlight again what mentioned by Nishimura Sensei, that all technologies are required for the region to successfully achieve the energy transition. With that, thank you very much, and looking forward for fruitful discussions today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zulfikar. May you stay on stage for the photo session. Mr. Zulfikar, may you stay on stage for the photo session. For the photo session, I invite to the stage Mr. Zulfikar, also His Excellency Insinyur Yudo Dwinanda Priyadi, His Excellency Professor Hidetoshi Nishimura, His Excellency Mr. Yunus Saiful Haq, dan Her Excellency Ibu Emma Sri Martini. Please come up stage for the photo session. Please smile to the camera. 1, 2, 3. Once more. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you so much for the second photo session. May I invite to the stage all speakers and moderators for today. Please come up stage to join the photo session for today's morning session. Thank you, the crew will direct you. Okay, this is the speakers for the first morning session today. Okay. Smile to the camera, 1, 2, 3. Once more, 1, 2, 3. Again, 1, 2, 3. And for the videographer. Thank you very much. You may return to your seat. Okay, following the next session, we will have a presentation bringing up the topic, opportunities and challenges for mobilization of appropriate energy finance to address carbon neutral pathways in ASEAN, present to you by the Senior Policy Fellow of Area. I invite to the stage Professor Jun Arima.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies. It is my great pleasure to make a keynote speech on this occasion. So could you please put on my screen, slides on the screen? Well, as pointed out by many previous speakers, we are in the crossroad, and then the journey to carbon neutrality. That is a common challenge for all the countries. But of course, there is a specificity for each region, and Asian region has its particular challenges and opportunities. Next one, please. And since the adoption of the Paris Agreement and adoption of the Glasgow Climate Pact, many ASEAN countries have already announced their respective carbon neutrality goals towards 2050 or 2060 and so on. And it is one thing to announce long-term carbon neutrality goal, but that is another thing to have a robust roadmap towards that ultimate objectives. So what is needed now is a robust roadmap leading to ultimate objective of their respective carbon neutrality goals. So to help such deliberation, AREA and IEJ, Institute of Energy Economics of Japan, has conducted technology deployment scenarios analysis. achieving their respective goals with minimum cost in each country. And we have assumed many technologies, including solar, wind, nuclear, geothermal, hydro, and also ammonia, hydrogen, and the CCUS, of course. And in the power generation sector, which you can see on the screen, renewable energy becomes the main source, accounting for 54 to 56% out of the total generation in ASEAN region in 2060. But hydrogen and ammonia, including co-firing with fossil fuels such as coal and natural gas, will be a part of the decarbonization power sector after 2040. So next one, please. And as many of us have already pointed out, energy transition towards carbon neutrality does not happen overnight. In the short term, efficient gas-fired power plant will curb CO2 emissions from fossil fuel power generation. And ongoing challenge is because of the rush in European market towards LNG cargo, LNG price tends to be more expensive, and that is, say, making Asian countries to procure LNG more difficult. And that could, in the end, delay the fuel switching from coal to natural gas. So that suggests that, as pointed out by Mr. Kihara in his opening remarks, we still need fossil fuels, and in particular natural gas, for, say, ordinary and orderly and just transitions, and for affordable energy transition. And natural gas is crucial, not only for energy security, but also pragmatic pathway for low carbon energy future. And in the longer term, you can see CCUS and co-firing with ammonia and hydrogen. In countries, quite often, renewable is regarded as a panacea. But as pointed out by many previous speakers, we need all the technologies. Renewable is, of course, a very much important option, but not only that, ammonia, hydrogen, co-firing, and also CCUS are absolutely necessary. Next one, please. And many dilemmas are peculiar to Asian region, and one of them is a very much young vintage of coal power plants in this region. And for example, in ASEAN, 58% of the coal power plants are under 10 years. And it is not simply realistic to assume that such young coal power generation plants can be obliged to retire in the middle of their lifetime. Yes, there's a JETP, and yes, there's an ADB program for encouraging early retirement of the coal-fired power plant. But given a large number of young coal power generation plants, that financial assistance will not be sufficient for encouraging early retirement of the all young coal power generation plants. So that means how we need to live with these young coal-fired power plants, how to reduce the carbon footprint from existing thermal power plants. Next one, please. So that is why many ASEAN countries are not yet committing to coal phase out as demanded by the OECD countries, despite the announcement of carbon neutrality goals towards 2050 and 2060. And I know that in the most recent G20 Energy Transition Ministers meeting, there was a heated debate whether or not they should include a wording of phase down of unabated fossil fuels by a certain period. And there was no agreement among G20 countries, while G7 countries strongly demanded inclusion of such a, the strong language about coal phase out or coal phase down or fossil fuel phase out or fossil fuel phase down. But they encountered some reaction from non-G7 countries. So that is another example which shows different perspective and different, how can I say, interpretation of the carbon neutrality. Next one, please. And we need to consider a pragmatic and affordable pathway, a realistic pathway for energy transition in this region. And for example, co-firing of ammonia in coal power plant is one of the pragmatic solutions for reducing CO2 emissions from the existing coal power plant. For example, carbon intensity can be lowered to an equivalent level of the natural gas if the co-firing ratio of ammonia reached to 50%. So it is not completely green technology because it still emits CO2, but emitted CO2 will be much, much lower compared with the current situation. So we call it as transition technologies. Next one, please. So all of them suggest that transition technologies are indispensable for pragmatic, affordable, and sustainable decarbonization pathway in this region. And as our scenario analysis indicates, early, partial, and deep decarbonization of fossil fuel power generation plants is crucial for ASEAN's decarbonization pathways. As you can see, green part is green technologies, so complete decarbonization. But before the large deployment of those green technologies, we need light blue technologies and deep blue technologies for early and partial and deep decarbonization technologies. And early decarbonization include early phase out of coal power plant, and partial decarbonization include co-firing with ammonia and hydrogen, and deep decarbonization includes CCUS. And those technologies need to be introduced in a phased manner. They cannot be introduced at once. Next one, please. And with this in mind, we have published a technology list and perspective of transition finance in Asia. And it covers transition technologies in upstream and power sector, accounting for over 50% of the total regional CO2 emissions. They include such technologies as CCGT and low carbon ammonia and hydrogen and the CCUS. In total, we have covered 10 technologies in power sector and upstream sectors. And we intend to further expand the scope of the coverage of these technologies to other end-use sectors. Next one, please. And deployment of transition technologies calls for investment and bankable investment. And this is why transition finance is truly crucial. And with this in mind, AREA is now participating in the Asia Transition Finance Study Group for exploring ways and means for facilitating transition finance in this region. And in this study group, 20 commercial banks and 6 development banks and export credit agencies and 13 public agencies and finance associations are the members in this study group. Next one, please. And Asia Transition Finance Guideline was developed by Asia Transition Finance Study Group, and that guidelines covers basics and applications for transition finance so as to be able to guide transition finance beginners. From year 2023, this year, we started to take the lead in this study group related activities to further refine the guidelines and familiarize the concept of transition finance to other financial institutions and stakeholders within the region. And through such activities, such as learning session or one-to-one, communication and so on, several challenges are being identified. Next one, please. And first of all, our project utilizing transition finance has not been materialized yet, and potential receivers of transition finance are not necessarily aware of transition finance reference. And in order to materialize a transition finance or transition projects, public authorities need to provide sectorial or national transition regulation, and also roadmaps and so on, local supply chain and carbon market. So that kind of enabling environment where transition finance is, or transition projects is regarded necessary, is a prerequisite for increasing demand for transition projects and transition finance. And also financial assistance, such as blended finance and dedicated funds, could facilitate the bankability of transition pilot projects. And also, we are increasingly recognize that fundamental problem is a different perspective or interpretation of so-called transition finance. Nowadays, many stakeholders and institutions and international organizations are talking about transition finance. But the detailed interpretation of transition finance are not necessarily exactly the same. In general, developed country tends to focus very much stringent on 1.5 degrees Celsius goals. And any project which will not lead to 2050 carbon neutrality or 1.5 degrees Celsius target are not regarded as a transition project. But on the other hand, looking at, for example, G20 discussion, they are talking about Paris Agreement temperature goal. Paris Agreement temperature goal is not necessarily 1.5 degree alone. Paris temperature goal is well below 2 degrees, and if possible, pursuing efforts to 1.5 degrees. So, in other words, the energy transition pathway and the Paris temperature goal is much more, how can I say, much provides breathing space for developing countries. So therefore, transition pathway tends to be radically different between 1.5 degree pathway and 2 degree pathway, for example. So, and if the transition project is leading to 2 degree pathway, but may not lead to 1.5 degree pathway, then the interpretation of transition finance or transition project could be different. So this challenge will emerge repeatedly from now to incoming years. So since developed countries have a strong influence in global standard setting, finance institutions, which tends to be very much affected by such an international global debate, tend to be hesitant to providing finance to transition technologies such as CCGT and ammonia. But this could ultimately result in impeding pragmatic transition in this region. So please go to the next page, and that is my final page. So I think our challenge is clear. The pathways towards carbon neutrality could be diverse among countries, reflecting their national circumstances, and this point has been again pointed out by all the previous speakers. And transition pathway in the ASEAN region are different from those in developed countries. So given continuous role of fossil fuel in the ASEAN region, ammonia, hydrogen, and the CCUS are vital for decarbonization. And not only that, the fuel switching from coal to natural gas is also absolutely necessary. So accordingly, transition finance tailored for Asian energy reality is absolutely necessary. Policies and measures for encouraging the demand for transition technologies are crucial. That includes, the clear roadmap and also foreseeable, predictable regulation, and also pathways setting, and also supply chain, carbon market. All of them are necessary. But lastly, I'd like to point out again that Asian region, Asian countries should raise their voices in the global debate. And necessity of ammonia, CCGT, or CCUS is somehow the common sense here in this room and also in Asian fora. But we also need to recognize that it is not necessarily the common sense in such fora as COP. And if those, some of you have not participated in COP negotiation, then you should go there. You will listen to completely different discussion. Some of them say that fossil fuel is over, and some of them do not regard ammonia as a transition technologies because it is fossil fuel related technologies. So completely different discussion, but that discussion tends to be more influential in the global debate. So that is why Asian countries need to raise their voice, making their case for energy transition in this region. Otherwise, the global standard, without due regard to Asian reality, energy reality, could be another de facto standard, and that is not for the benefit of this region. So Asian countries should raise their voice in the global debate to ensure smooth, realistic, and stepwise energy transition tailored for this region. So, and I think the forthcoming 2 sessions about energy transition will be very much insightful, and I'm looking forward to listening to the debate. Thank you very much indeed for your attention.
Thank you, Professor John Arima, for your presentation on the opportunities and challenges for mobilization of appropriate energy finance to address carbon neutral pathways in ASEAN. As usual, we have learned a lot from you. Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue to the panel session, we would like to inform you that we already provide snack and coffee outside of this room. You may bring and enjoy your refreshment inside of this room. We hope that you can stay until the very last agenda for today. Also, apart from everyone who are here, there are 120 participants who are joining us virtually from all corners of the world. So I welcome you all, online participants. Thank you for being online with us today. We hope that you can stay online until the very last session of the day. Also, for all of you who are here, I would like to announce that this room is equipped with Wi-Fi, so you can connect to the Wi-Fi connection without password. And please welcome the moderator of the session, our energy economist of area. Please welcome Dr. Aloysius Joko Purwanto.
Good morning, very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joko Purwanto, and like perhaps 20 million other Indonesians, my name is Joko. And that is very simple and reminds you of our president. And this morning, I just would like to talk a little bit more about financing, technologies, and we have heard how financing and technology are two most crucial factors that determine energy transition from our Honorable His Excellency Mr. Yudo Priyadi, as well as Pak Nuki through Pak Zulfikar has mentioned also that financing can be catalyst but also can play a role as a bottleneck for the energy transition. And lastly, I would like also to cite it what Professor Arima has mentioned, that he would like to have a debate here. When Professor Arima said debate, it's a very high standard. So my burden is very heavy here. Okay, so I would like to introduce our 4 panelists that will be providing to us a very good debate and a very high standard debate. We will have by online Ms. Zenita Astra Paramita, Senior Fiscal Policy Analyst of the Fiscal Policy Office of Republic of Indonesia. And then we will have also Mr. Masayuki Fujiki, Managing Director, Head of Structured Finance, Solution Products Division, MUFG Bank, Japan. We will have Mr. Muhammad Rashdan bin Muhammad Yusuf, Chairman of the Energy Commission of Malaysia. And finally, we will have also by online, Mr. Sohayashi, Special Advisor of the Energy Transition at the Ministry of Energy, Trade and Industry, Japan, also Project Officer for area. And not to be alone in the podium, I would like to invite Mr. Fujiki, Mr. Masayuki Fujiki, and Mr. Muhammad Rashdan to come with me to sit in the podium with me. Big applause for the two gentlemen. Please, you can sit. Please, have a seat. Yes, please. So, without further ado, I would like to invite by online Ms. Senita Astra Paramita, Senior Fiscal Policy Analyst, Fiscal Policy Office of Republic of Indonesia, to deliver her speech.
Good morning, everyone. I do apologize that us from the Fiscal Policy Agency cannot attend this discussion there in person, as we also have conducted the side event, ASEAN side event here in Jakarta. So please let me introduce myself first. My name is Zenita. As Pak Joko has already mentioned, that I'm the analyst from the Fiscal Policy Agency and the Ministry of Finance of Indonesia. So is there someone who will help my slide? Or should I share it from here? Pak Joko, can you help? Okay.
Yes, so we have it here. So yeah, one of the colleagues here will operate for you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Joko. So all the delegates and distinguished speakers. So today I would like to talk the updates on the Indonesia ATM country platform. Next slide, please. So when we're talking about the climate change, we all agree that the climate change is a global risk. So it has become a global spotlight due to the increasing evidence of its impact on the world societies and the environment. And now the climate change symptoms are getting stronger. Next slide. So Indonesia itself, also, of course, is very vulnerable to the impacts of the climate change, as Indonesia is an archipelagic country with more than 17,000 islands and is very vulnerable to the climate change risks, such as rising sea levels. And from 2010 and 20, the national greenhouse gas emissions experienced a growing trend of around 2.6% per year. And Indonesia also experienced increasing temperature of 0.02 degrees Celsius each year. So Indonesia per capita emissions right now reach 2.1 CO2 metric tons per capita, but it's still below the G20 average with 6.7 CO2 metric tons per capita, and world average with 4.3 CO2 metric tons per capita. Next, please. And here is the Indonesia's climate change agenda. We have both mitigation and adaptation, and the strategy and the mandate from Paris Agreement and towards the net zero emission in 2060 or sooner. So in the mitigation, we can see here that when we're talking about the energy and transportation, it's the second highest greenhouse gas emission reduction target in the enhanced NDC per sector. We can see here that the energy and transportation target is 358 million tons CO2. So Indonesia emission reduction target is 31.89% as a business as usual, or with the domestic financing, and up to 43.20% with the support of the international. So here is also the changes in the 2022 NDC. There's the emission reduction target of these several ASEAN countries by 2030. You can see here that the Indonesia has already revise the target from 29 to 38.89 and 40 to 43.20. Next slide, please. So when we're talking about the financial resource that is very required to fully address the climate change, it's including, of course, the achieve the NDC target and also the road to net zero emission in 2060 or sooner. So here is the estimates cost of the mitigation. So we are benchmarking to these two. One is the third biennial update report, so by the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, and the roadmap NDC Mitigation Indonesia, also from the same ministry. So we can see here that the funding needs for the energy and transportation sector is the first higher. So there's must be like we really need to achieve this by the prepared program and activities that can be implemented, and to find the innovative finance that, of course, it cannot be fulfilled by only the public budget. So next, please. So now this one is that we want to showcase the Indonesia has been done up to now. So as you know that Indonesia has launched the Indonesia Energy Transition Mechanism during the G20 presidency last year in the 2022. So the main objective of this ETM is like optimizing the energy mix. And of course, it will be enhancing the emission reduction in electricity subsector. And it will be implemented by accelerate the early retirement of coal-fired power plant. And afterwards is by boosting the renewable energy power generation investment. Next, please. So here is the structure of the Indonesia ETM country platform. So here there is a country platform manager that already assigned by the Ministry of Finance. There is the PT SMI as the country manager. So PT SMI will develop a blended finance, whether it's from the low-cost loan by the government of Indonesia and also by engaging the commercial. In this case right now is INA and still welcoming any others. And also from the others fund like philanthropies, multilateral and bilateral. And so there's like two pillars, actually three pillars of this Indonesia ETM country platform. One is, like I said earlier, it must be the coal phase out, how to early retire the CFPP. The second pillar is like how to develop the clean energy by the renewable energy. And the third one is the transmission that we think it's cannot be separated from the renewable energy. So, oh, sorry. So my time is up. So I think this is mostly this is what we want to showcase, the ETM country platform structure, and we can discuss it further. Thank you, and over back to you, Pak Joko.
Thank you so much, Ibu Zenita Astra Paramita. And I just would like to remind the participants here that after the four panelists delivering their presentation, then I will open the floor to questions. So please prepare and your question. Then I will be opening the floor after the fourth panelist. So for the second one, it is our excellent panelist, Mr. Masayuki Fujiki, Managing Director, Head of Structured Finance Solution Products Division of MUFG Bank, Japan.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this very important event. So, hello everyone, my name is Masa Fujiki, Head of Structured Finance stationed in Tokyo. So structured finance includes a couple of the products, which are project finance to the renewables, power plant, infrastructure, upstream, midstream, downstream. And also the financing together with export credit agencies or ECAs, such as JBIC and NEXI. and also the financing to the aviation of vessel. These are the structural finance I'm in charge of. So MUFG is one of the largest commercial banks in Japan, and is very active for the providing the financing, particularly in Asia, together with a partner bank. For example, here in Indonesia, we're working together with the Danamon Bank, and also the Currency in Thailand, and also Security Bank in the Philippines, and the Vietnam Bank in Vietnam. So MUFG is very, very active in the project finance market. We have the project finance team in Tokyo, Singapore, Hong Kong, Sydney, also the London, and also New York. We have approximately 300 professionals dedicated for the project financing. So we are very active also in the Asian market, particularly for the renewables. But on top of that, what I believe is important is to have the a framework or the initiative in Asia to promote the transition financing. So having said so, MUFG has been involved into the several initiatives. So one of the initiatives is the, as Professor Arima mentioned, and also the Hayashi-san may be touching upon later on. But together with AREA, MUFG is leading the initiative so-called the Asia Transition Finance Study Group to set up the kind of guideline and also the willingness to give the advice to the government. And the second one is the recent involvement and the signing of the MOU with the NEXI, one of the Japanese ECA, to promote the blended finance to align with the strategy of the net zero banking, net zero emission community initiative here in Asia. And on top of that, it is also very important for us to be involved into the global initiative. So one of the initiatives we are taking a leading role is the Net Zero Banking Alliance initiative. This is a global initiative. So the a variety of the global finance institutions already joined. So we are taking the leading role of that, and it is very important because, as Professor Arima mentioned, we have to raise a voice as to what's going on in Asia and what is the situation in Asia. Because we, as a global finance, financier, it's very important to make a big voice and ask the understanding. Because we are not operating in Asia, we are operating globally. So we have to get the understanding from the global market. Having said so, it's very important for us to be involved into the global initiative as well. So personally, I believe I'm focusing on the couple of the technologies. One is hydrogen, second ammonia, third sustainable aviation fuel, and fourth battery storage, and finally CCS or CCUS. And one of the examples for our involvement is the hydrogen. We invested the $25 million into the one of the California's hydrogen station business. And also my young team member has been seconded to that business. Very interesting situation. I recommended myself to the one of the candidates, but my manager declined. So it's a kind of a very important business there. It's very important for us to have the profit from this investment. But on top of that, I think it's very important for us to understand what's going on in California in the hydrogen business. Because maybe 5 or 10 years later, that hydrogen station business or hydrogen society will come back to Japan. And also our client is now seriously thinking about the hydrogen business. Then 5 years later, our client come to us and ask the financing. I cannot say, okay, I'm going to start studying the hydrogen. So that's why it's very important for us to be involved in a very early stage of the new business. So I also want to be involved in the other area like ammonia or battery or sustainable aviation fuel or CCS, CCS. So it's a kind of the area we are very keen to co-work with the partners. I'll stop here, and again, thank you very much for inviting me to this very important panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fujiki-san. So it is always amazing to learn about how Japanese private sectors is moving towards the most cutting-edge technologies, not in Japan, but in other part of the world. but one day to get back to Japan. That is amazing, and we would like to learn more about that later on. And for you who have just joined us, I just would like to also to making a little bit of reminder about Ms. Zenita presentation previous to Mr. Fujiki about Indonesia position in climate change mitigation financing, about the energy transition mechanism that Indonesia has elaborated and is ready to implement. Now to our third panelist, we will have Mr. Muhammad Rasdan bin Muhammad Yusuf, Chairman of the Energy Commission of Malaysia. Please.
A very good morning to distinguished panelists, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I have a slide deck. I was just wondering we can put it up. Thank you. So next slide, please. Okay. So I just wanted to take a global perspective, and this is from the recent IPCC report, and it makes for rather grim reading that essentially our ability to stay on the 1.5 degree path is actually in danger. And I realize 1.5 is set, say, by the UN and by essentially the global north, and maybe we, as the professor before us mentioned, that we might need to have some flexibility, but nonetheless, the bulk of the world is looking at that standard. Already we are at 1.1 already, and anything more is precarious. The figure on the right-hand side basically says that if we continue to go with our current fossil fuel generation, existing and planned, then we cannot reach it. Oh, sorry. So in ASEAN, I think all of us are very committed to the 1.5% goal. All of us really have stated either net zero or carbon neutral goals or significant carbon reduction goals for each of our countries by either 2050 or 2060 latest. All of us are committed. Now, Malaysia had worked with IRENA to produce our own country's outlook, but here I share, as we did work with them closely, their global outlook, and clearly the path to 1.5 degrees is really looking at renewable energy, which I shall focus on in my talk today. At the power generation side, it's 90% at 90 petawatt hour by 2050. In terms of energy mix, it's 77%. Again, mainly in renewable. Just a mention on hydrogen at the bottom. By 2050, almost 95% or 94% of hydrogen would all be renewable based. So renewable is a very important technology, perhaps the most important, and even for hydrogen. On the issue of finance, there is a huge investment gap at the moment. The requirement around the world is about 150 trillion US dollars, equivalent to 5 trillion per annum, which is a remarkable number. Point number 3, as you can see, 3/4 of renewable energy so far comes from the private sector, but most of the money really would flow to what's called least perceived risk. For example, in 2020, 83% of solar financing is from the private sector. We believe that public finance and public policy should then crowd in private capital to make our transition work. After all, the amounts here are staggering. The annual investments across all energy transition technologies must quadruple to achieve our 1.5% degree ambition. I just want to focus on what we believe is a key infrastructure, but often forgotten when mentioned about technologies, and it's to do with the grid. As you can see from Arina's report, just on the power side of 2.2 trillion annually for 1.5 degree scenario, 800 billion is the annual spend required for the grid networks and also things like battery storage and so on. For ASEAN, that equivalent number of 800 billion is $50 billion annually. That's just on the grid. And without the grid, we can't essentially transmit any of this energy. So for effective green financing, ASEAN countries must develop wholesale markets, energy markets, or at least equivalent policies where green energy is properly priced. I believe this is necessary for us to then incentivize private capital. But as we can see from other developed nations, where they already have developed markets, they have market failure when not enough is allocated to their own grids, leading to huge curtailments. So looking at ASEAN, most of our countries are not or don't really have a developed market. Malaysia does not yet. We are what we have a vertically integrated utility with some IPPs as generation. And of course, the Energy Commission then heavily regulates. So not many of us have the necessary market mechanisms for pricing green energy. So just to conclude, as my time is up, every member ASEAN must be committed, obviously, to the 1.5%, which we are. Therefore, we must have public policy that should crowd in private capital together with either direct finance or guarantees. Energy transition policies must be market-based, and I think this is a fundamental denominator to ensure that green energy is properly priced to then incentivize private funding and private capital markets. ASEAN members must also enhance the transition infrastructure, as I mentioned, the grid, and the grid, together with others like batteries, storage, and so on, and not to mention our own interconnects between each other. Public policy, last but not least, must be enable efficient green financing. It must be just and inclusive. This is necessary for social acceptance and to have a sustainable approach. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Muhammad Rasdan. I think you brought up, yes, very crucial point, like the crucial, like the importance of infrastructure grid. We see, like in several bad experience, that when a country is concentrating too much in developing renewable power generation, but forgot to build the grid, and then also like the how to direct energy transition to get to approach of a market-based approach, which is very important, and that will be, I think that will lead us also to the kind of a least cost optimum of situation of the market. Okay, now I would like to go to our fourth panelist, which is who is Mr. So Hayashi, the Special Advisor of Energy Transition at the Ministry of Energy, Trade and Industry, Japan. He will be delivering his speech online.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, I'm here. Good morning, everyone. This is Sho Hayashi. And yes, can you have my presentation deck? Thank you. This is from the previous speaker, I believe.
Yes, we have your slides.
Oh, okay. Sorry, it's not reflected on the Zoom screen.
Maybe you can go, it is the cover. Yeah, this, the first slide, yes.
Okay, yes. Thank you. So as many of the previous speakers had been mentioning, in order to supply the growing energy demand in ASEAN region and entire Asia, we believe that the not only green technology, but we also need to utilize the transition technologies and to think about the realistic just and orderly transition for the region. Next slide, please. However, we throughout the discussion at the Asia Transition Finance Study Group, we found out that the financial institutions are actually having difficulties to make a fair financial decision on the transition technologies because for green technologies, there are the taxonomies and different types of rules created globally, and it is easy to justify the financing behaviors. But for the transition technologies, there is still ambiguous guidance on what would be good for both sustaining the environmental effect and also the economic effect of each project. Next slide, please. So this was the background of the setup of the energy ATF study group in 2021. And the purpose of this study group is to bridge the existing guidelines and policies coming out from different organizations, such as the global standards coming from ICMA. There are various pathways published also, of course, including AREA, but also IEA and GFS and different organizations. And there are taxonomies and technology roadmaps or energy transition roadmaps created by each government, both the financial and energy authorities. And the ATF study group does not intend to create a yet new rules for people to follow, but to set up a guidance and understanding on how to connect all those existing materials and which part are the necessity for each stakeholders. Next slide, please. Yeah, and so far we have held more than 20 study group and learning sessions. It is joined by various participants, not only the financial institutions, but also the various stakeholders in transition finance domain. We keep having the dialogue between the financial institutions and the government entities, as well as the financial receivers or the industry players. Next slide, please. And also, as Professor Arima also mentioned beforehand, AREA published this technology list and perspective for transition finance in Asia last year. This is to provide of technical information for financial institutions to evaluate each project, because there was the voices from the financial institutions that they're not necessarily updated about the latest information and development, and they're not the technology expert. And so we decided to publish this technology list as AREA, the research institute. And last year, we focused on the upstream and power energy sector, but also, as Professor Arima mentioned, we plan to expand it to a wider scope so that we can support the energy transition in Asia as a whole. Next slide, please. Yes, so these are the 10 technologies that is listed at the technology list, but I'll skip this because Arima Sensei already mentioned. Next slide, please. And this is the last slide, but Yes, so as I mentioned, the ATF study group has issued its guideline and on top of that, area has issued the transition technology list last year. And based on those, this year, the study group is ongoing with the peer learning session among financial institutions and private-public dialogue with the governments and the identifying common challenges with the industry stakeholders. And the final activity report will be published in a month at the AGPM in Tokyo. Yes, so I would be grateful if the audience today would keep on updated about the activity reports by the Asian Transition Finance Study Group. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Hayashi-san. I guess your message have strengthened the previous message by Professor Nishimura and also Professor Jun Arima about the type of technologies, transition technologies that the key holder, like the key players in the financing industry can have a look and not to abandon, because they are playing role kind of low-hanging fruit in reaching out our climate ambitions. So I would like to to get some questions from the floor. Do you okay? So please, if you have a question, please raise your hand, and then please introduce your name, your institution, and please address your question in a most concise way as possible. Thank you. I wait for the question. Yes, Professor Arima, please.
Okay, thank you very much for the presenters and the panelists. My question goes to Mr. Fujiki about your experience in working in the region and also working in the global stage. And as you said, in the global stage, GFANZ, Global Financial Alliance for Net Zero, is quite prevalent, and MUFG is a member of the GFANZ. And GFANZ has a particular strong focus on 1.5 degrees Celsius target and aiming at 2050 carbon neutrality. But in this region, some countries are aiming at 2060 carbon neutrality or even thereafter. So they are not necessarily consistent with 1.5 degree pathway. So there seems to be a gap between the GFANZ debate and also regional reality. And having participated in the GFANZ discussion, do you recognize that there is, the emerging, how can I say, growing understanding on the side of GFANZ about Asian energy reality? In other words, they tends to be more, how can I say, flexible in providing more finance to transition technologies. Are you observing such a trend? So that's my question.
Yes, please, Mr. Fujiki.
Thank you very much for the question, Professor Arima. Actually, I think it's a very, important question, and we are, honestly speaking, struggling with the balancing between the regional and global, because as I mentioned, the situation in Asia for the transition finance is very different from the, US and also the Europe. So that's why we are taking the leading role as a kind of the head of the finance and the engagement in the Net Zero Banking Alliance, which is a global, initiative. So you're completely correct. Each country has its own kind of the net zero target by 2050 or 60 or 70, whatever. But personally, I understand it's very important for each country has to anyway set the goal for the net zero. And I think the timing is totally up to each country, because each country has its own situations. And global initiative like GFANZ or the Net Zero Banking Alliance have to understand it, otherwise it doesn't work. So introducing the framework of the Western framework into the Asia, to me, it doesn't work. So we have to have our own kind of the initiative or framework. That's a kind of what we are now trying to balance between the global and the regional. So not perfect answer, but we are now trying to do that. So thank you.
Yes, maybe just slightly bit more. So are you promoting also kind of intra-regional cooperation between countries in order to to fill the gap? I mean, like if it is like partially, but do you promoting also like cooperation between countries like in ASEAN?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm not sure if the Western society perfectly understand what's going on here in Asia, and understand and also set the regulation framework, thinking about the Asian regions. But at least we have to try, and we have to raise our voice, in the global initiative. That's why I think it's very important, for us as one of the Asian financial institutions, taking the leading role in a global initiative. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So I invite other questions for other panelists. Yes, Pak Utmo, please introduce yourself, perhaps.
Thank you, Pak Joko. Just one question to Mr. Fujiki. My name is Kiki from Myanmar. So when it comes to transition finance, so I would like to know how far is your, if you make some investment decision, how long would you expect to get a return on your investment? I mean, because I give you a context of Indonesia when it comes to development of Masela projects. So that project is a long-term commitment to produce LNG, which will come on stream. The first is in 2030. So if it comes to production, it's maybe last up to 30 years, so it must be 2060 or even more. So when you make an investment decision when it comes to carbon neutrality between 2050 or beyond or 2060, how will it affect your decision to invest in such a transition projects?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. It is also a very important question, and I've been facing that kind of dilemma or questions for the investment into the transaction, particularly for the upstream or midstream transactions. So you're perfectly correct. It's getting more and more difficult for the private sector to provide the financing to the fossil fuel or the thermal power transaction, traditional thermal power transaction without any CO2 reduction equipment. So personally, I believe, which is it's a very important point again, is to see the clear pathway towards the net zero of that country, and that project is incorporated into that pathway. I think first of all, we want to see that kind of the pathway and the importance of the project. Then second point is how to provide the financing to that project. You're right. Now it's getting more and more difficult to provide a longer tenor financing, particularly the project over the 2050. So that's a kind of a technical point. And maybe we have to co-work with the export credit agency to reduce the portion of the commercial banks, or co-working with the government to get the support for the cash flow, so that we can get the full payment before the 2050. So it's a kind of technical discussion. So first of all, when we try to provide the financing and support that project, we want to see the importance of that project in that country. That project is definitely necessary for the net zero target in that country. Then after that, it's going to be a technical kind of the implementation. So happy to discuss.
Thank you, Fujiki-san. Not to put our two gentlemen here in a conflict, but I would like to ask Mr. Muhammad Rasdan perspective also to this kind of gap between what is expected by the government side or by the country side and the private sector side. Could you please comment?
Sure. Yes, thank you, Pak Joko, for your question. I can at least give you the struggle that we have, especially in Malaysia, and this obviously extends, I'm sure, very similarly across ASEAN. Basically, the cost of energy in a country like Malaysia generally has to be subsidized. And this is what I mean in my talk earlier about market benchmarks then for green energy. So as we transition to green energy, do we want to continue that burden, or what I call the green burden, to basically the public or the government? And I think that's very difficult for all of our governments here in ASEAN. The amounts required are in the trillions. I think no government, nor the public sector, nor the people can take this burden. So this is what I mean by there needs to be some market referencing for green energy pricing. And it would be good perhaps if ASEAN can come together, maybe we can have some form of ASEAN-wide cooperation on what that should be, especially if we have cross-border trade. Then hopefully that subsidy burden would reduce, private banks can come in, and therefore we can have a proper demand and supply construct for green energy, which will be primarily enabled by private finance, like Mr. Hiteshi here.
I really like your approach that you have brought since the beginning, to have a market-based mechanism that will be kind of a compromising and giving win-win solution for both the public and private sectors, and at the same time reducing government burden to subsidize green transition. Thank you. Please not forget that we have still two virtual panelists somewhere in the internet. So yeah, gentlemen at the back, please introduce yourself and your question, please. Hopefully for the two panelists that join us virtually as well, please.
Hi everyone, I'm Yunus from 10X Indonesia, a consultancy in Bali on business transformation. I have a question for all people here who know how the energy works in ASEAN. Why there are not more tidal energy setups, wave energy? And is it a cost issue? Is it the lack of understanding of the technology or adoption? Or could you elaborate on the tidal energy? Because I didn't see it on the slides, or maybe I missed it. Thank you.
Okay, I would like to invite the first two gentlemen here to comment on that question.
Maybe I could just have a quick 2-minute response on that. I think in my slide I mentioned in our experience that private capital tends to look at the least, or at least the perceived least risk. And at this moment, I think tidal is a very, very nascent technology. And therefore, there's a lot of associated risks still a lot to learn. On the other end of the spectrum, you have solar photovoltaic. That seems to be highly understood from a renewable standpoint. So I believe it's about risk.
Yeah. Okay, very quickly. So thank you very much for the questions. You know, I agree with the opinion. So maybe the private sector are taking a look at the more kind of the proven technology, like solar, or offshore wind, onshore wind, or even floating. So I think after exploring these kind of the opportunity, then what is the next opportunity? Then tidal maybe one of the opportunities. Maybe size, or the investment size or investment return, maybe one of the issues for the private sector at this moment. But of course, tidal is one of the very kind of promising areas. So after exploring the opportunity for the solar and the wind, then private sector maybe coming back to that sector. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. I invite Ms. Ibu Zenita to comment on that. Perhaps from Indonesian perspective, there is some insight about the possibility of exploring tidal wave as a renewable energy. Ms. Zenita?
Pak Joko, I'm so sorry. I'm not really understand the question because it's not really heard here. Can you please repeat the question?
So there is one gentleman here asking about the possibility of financing tidal or wave as one of the potential source of new energy. Do you have any insight, or perhaps the Indonesian government has some already some preparation towards the utilizing this new type of technology or energy? Sorry.
Okay, so thank you for the question. So actually, us here as a government of Indonesia is really open for all the energy mix, particularly for if it is the renewable energy. But I think the type of the energy itself and the technology, it will be depends on the analysis from the technical ministry, like Ministry of Energy here, like Pak Gigi earlier has already there, right? So I think it's from the ABTKE, so the renewable energy in the Ministry of Energy. From us, from the Ministry of Finance, actually, we are really open to finance all the renewable energy that included in the renewable energy mix plan that has been developed by that has been formulated by the government of Indonesia. So, but right now, because we're still on the excess of energy, so before or align with the development of the renewable energy, we are also focusing on the early retirement, also to reduce the emission, and also also because like I said, we have the excess of electricity right now. So I think we have to do both sides to have understand the supply and demand. I think that's from us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anita. So Indonesia is currently focusing on some more kind of feasible steps in the energy transition, but at the same time also would like to also explore the possibility of the most cutting edge energy sources, which is quite costly to explore and to exploit, but the possibility is still there. I will welcome two more questions before we close this. Yes, Miss Lady in the back, yeah, in the back row, yes, please. Please introduce yourself and then.
Hello, good morning. My name is Samantha, associated with AREA. I have a question for all the panelists. There are, I think, a huge a source of funds are coming in through JETP, mainly in Indonesia and Vietnam, which are two countries in ASEAN. So do you think that when we're talking about financing the transition for ASEAN, do you think that Indonesia and Vietnam will rely a lot on the JETP funds? And if so, do you think that both countries will be a major leader in the decarbonization pathway for ASEAN? Thank you.
Thank you for the very interesting and important questions. So I invite Hayashi-san to reply first.
Okay, thank you very much. In my understanding, JETP is a very strong tool, but still it is one of the many financial tools that can support the energy transition in Asia. And we're at the stage that we need to utilize every single ways and categorization or labels to support the different types of energy projects in Asia. So there are projects that can go through the JETP. However, we also need to keep in mind that there are a wider range of energy transition related projects. And that's why we're having the Asian Transition Finance Study Group so that we can keep all those possibilities open. Thank you.
Thank you, Hayashi-san. Ms. Zenita, are you still online? Perhaps you can give us your perspective from Indonesian side. Ms. Zenita, please. Okay, otherwise I would like to invite one of the two gentlemen to comment.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your question. This is also the important question. So, what I understand is, as you mentioned, it's not possible for the government funds to support everything, right? So, even for the JETP or the other kind of institutions, maybe it's a first early stage transaction, that kind of the governmental or the public fund has to provide a significant support to attract the private sectors. But after the first transactions, the next project should be much easier for the private sector. So the involvement in of the in such a public fund should be less and less. So that's how it works in this market. So first early stage project, yes, the fund has to come from the public, but maybe in a later stage, private sector will be very happy to take the more and more risk. That's my understanding. That's why it's very important to think about the appropriate risk sharing between the public and private. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Fujiki-san. Perhaps Mr. Rasdan has things to add about JETP.
Yes, we in Malaysia look at great interest the involvement of JETP funds to Indonesia and Vietnam, and we would very much obviously support that initiative, and one day we would obviously want to participate ourselves. I also would like to echo what my colleague here mentioned about private-public risk sharing, because even with JETP, there are risks abound. And again, I think my call for markets, in this case for JETP, maybe we need a properly functioning carbon market, because if the carbon savings are priced properly, then and the carbon credits, then obviously more funding, both JETP, public and private, can come in to have a tremendous amount of carbon reduction in ASEAN.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rasdan. So, yeah, I will take one last question, perhaps from my colleague, Mr. Puman here. Please, Mr. Puman.
Thank you. Very good morning, Pak Joko. My name is Han Puman, Senior Energy Economist with area. I thank for all the panel for your excellent view. Just my question toward all the four panelists, that because transition finance quite important for Asia. You know that the more power generation, particularly, I think for coal, mainly they are young, basically around 10 years old. I just want to know from government side, any policy to drive the initiative that those power generation could take effort to retrofitting by introducing some of the recommended technology, whether they are retrofit to coal combustion and combined with CC. Appropriate policies from the government side, I think the industry will not take initiative. And from the bank side, I just want to know, are you comfortable to finance those kind of retrofitting? Because I think perspective-wise is diverse, because they still involved with fossil fuel. Some may concern about lock-in of this kind of utilization of power generation. I just want to hear from the government side as well as the banking side. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Pumin. So we have 4 minutes. So exactly 1 minute each panelist to comment to Mr. Puman's question about retrofitting and the possibility of financing that. Please, Mr. Rasdan first.
Sure. In Malaysia, as the Honorable Professor mentioned, a lot of our coal plants are very, very young. Some are even less than 5 years old, and they have another 30 years to go. And all of them are on IPPs, which means they have purchase power agreements with fixed pricing. The bulk of it are privately funded. So the problem that the government has is if we were to change that, the issue of sanctity of contracts and so on will come in. Enhancing the renewable energy mix, because it's very difficult to touch those ironclad commercial contracts already. They are all private, and they are locked by international banks and private capital. So this is the challenge. The challenge is they are young, they are all commercially funded, they all have ironclad contracts. So it's very hard to break them.
Thank you, Mr. Rasdan. So, Fujiki-san, please.
Thank you very much for the question. I think this is a very difficult question for me, to be honest. It's a kind of similar question as the previous question as to how we gonna, as a private sector, deal with this kind of transition technology. But some coal-fired power station we financed is still under the construction. How can we discuss the early retirement, which is still under the construction? So very, very difficult. So retrofitting is one of the very possible way. So again, I think it's very important that kind of retrofitting project is embedded into your country's pathway towards the net zero. That's the first step. And second way is to how to mitigate the risk, or how to co-work between the public and private again to reduce the reduce the risk of the net zero for the private sector, because each private sector companies now have the net zero target. So they have to, or we have to achieve that. So it's a kind of a very many kind of the rules for us that achieve. So when we think about the retrofitting project financed by the private sector, we have to think about the multiple regulations or rules or the restrictions, including the private sector's net zero. So I think after that it's going to be a technical question, as I mentioned, involvement of the ECAs, government, so that we can have the full repayment by the end of the 2050 or something like that. So it's a kind of technical. But personally speaking, I think the private sector has to support that kind of transition. Thank you.
Thank you, Fujiki-san. So I invite Ms. Zenita to comment on the possibility of financing retrofitting as part of coal retirement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think in Indonesia, it's the same condition and situation with the other speakers has also mentioned in other country. So some of the coal power plant right now is still like on the commissioning process, and some of them also like less than 5 years, and up to 2030 we still have some of the new coal power plant. So of course retrofitting it will be needed, because I think it's not feasible that all the power plant will be already retired. It will be based on the technical analysis. So it's only the old one with the high emission one that will be retired in the near future. So the other one, it should be considered to be retrofitting. But up to now, when we're talking about the framework of the ATM country platform, right now we haven't included the retrofitting, but it doesn't mean that the retrofitting won't be implemented in Indonesia. So right now in the ATM country platform, we're still focusing on the early retirement and also the development of the renewable energy. But we are still like considering and on the discussion to whether or not we put the retrofitting inside the framework of the ATM country platform, and also the repurposing of the coal power plant that already retired soon. So I think it's still be possible and feasible, and I think if it really needed, not only a retire, but retrofitting will be one of the possible and feasible solution to be done. But yet right now haven't been included in the ATM country platform Indonesia. Over to you, Pak Joko.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Zenita, Ibu Zenita. I think like on the basis of the case that we like energy researchers would like to know Indonesia like transparent plan what we would like to know. And yeah, Hayashi-san, please, you can comment on the retrofitting, but very short one, please.
Sure. I think all the important parts were mentioned by previous speakers. And then I think from ATF study group perspective, the retrofitting can be financed as long as we can prove that it is aligned or Paris aligned and contributing to the carbon neutrality in the future. So I think it is important for the each government to look at individual situation in the country and then place what would be the ideal technology to implement. And as long as there is a strategy to achieve carbon neutrality with the retrofitting, I think the possibility is still open. One thing I can say is that we should not judge at the moment that something is not eligible, but keep all the options open and then think what would be the ideal and optimal for the region and the country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hayashi-san. And without concluding this, we have had a quite fruitful discussion and a lot of essential key message that we can bring home and discuss more. So I would like to invite to give a big applause for our 4 panelists.
Thank you, Dr. Joko, for moderating the session and also ladies and gentlemen, I would also like to remind you that coffee break is served outside of this room. Please, you may enjoy it inside of this room. Also, I would like to remind you that after this morning session, we will have an afternoon session discussing advancing CCUS implementation for energy sector in ASEAN. So I really hope that all of you can also come here for the afternoon session. I would also thank all the participants joining us online for sending us your question. We will try as much as possible to accommodate your question. Without further ado, let us proceed to the second panel discussion, bringing up the topic, Financing Clean Technologies, Renewable and Green Finance in ASEAN. The session will be moderated by the Manager of Energy Modeling and Policy Planning from ACE. Please welcome Dr. Zulfikar Yurnaidi.
Good morning, good day, ladies and gentlemen. Back here again. So in the second sessions, we are going to deep dive on the financing options, especially on the green financing options for the sustainable energy futures. Following the first session on the discussions, I think we have a very distinguished panelists. We have 5 of them. Hopefully it can provide us various insights prior to the lunch break. So please allow me to call to the stage our panelists. We have Dr. Fauzia Zen, the senior economist from AREA. Please.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.